I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, homecoming on any campus is a special time, and especially here at Missouri Southern, it's a time for graduates to come back and for students and fans and faculty and everyone to gather. And today I'm honored to visit with one of our graduates, and I should say up front, one of our communication graduates, Esdra Lamy. Thank you for being here today.
Surreal, Judy.
You were here as one of our students. Now you're a guest on the program.
You know, as we were talking before the show started, I can't believe I spent so many semesters working the cameras, and now I'm actually sitting behind the set with you, so it's very surreal. Either that or I just feel a little bit older.
Right. Well, I want to explain to the audience, obviously you're here because of one of the honors you're receiving, Outstanding Alumni recognition. What was your reaction when you heard about that here?
No one else was available? So, look, that's the immediate reaction, because by nature, that's in my world where I grew up, how my mother raised me and my father raised me. It was never about trying to be the guy. It was just about doing the work. And so I still think of myself as a kid, as one of my colleagues reminded me recently that I'm not a kid. And so the idea of getting that phone call is something that usually goes to someone that I think is older, and it's hard for me to realize that I guess I am older now. Right. And I've been out in the world for a little bit, and that I've picked up some valuable experiences along the way. And I think the other reaction to it was, usually that means that's somebody who's so successful beyond imagination. Oh, I haven't felt that yet, so what am I missing? And then I took a step back. I had a great conversation with Lee, who is just phenomenal when it comes to alumni reach out work that she does, and she brought me back to reality. And I think I had to take it a step back and realize, oh, you know what? Very flattered, and so I couldn't be more appreciative of the honor, and certainly any opportunity to come back to this campus that's played such a big role in my life is one I'll jump on any day. Great.
Well, I welcome you and thank you for coming today. And I think let's share a little bit of information about what you did here at Missouri Southern as well as what you're doing now. But probably some people want to mention your communication major. Let's go back to the start. You know, Missouri Southern, starting as your college career.
Wow. So let's take it back even a few years before that, just so people have full context. I'm the product of an immigrant family. I was born in Haiti, and my father came ahead of us many years before that, and then he worked his way up to bring the family to the country. So in the place that he thought was the greatest place to live was Delaware. So we moved
to Delaware.
Well, he at least knew how to pick the number one. So he picked the best woman he could have picked for his wife, my mother, and then he picked the best place that he felt would be great for the kids, away from the traditional places that I think most folks from Haiti tend to move to, which typically is Miami, Florida, or New York, or even Boston.
So you weren't in a real big metro area.
We were not in a big metro area, and mind you, we came from Port-au-Prince, a city of 9 million people. So I didn't know the process of college, other than the fact that I knew I grew up in a very strict home, and I just wanted to go as far away from home as possible so I could have as much freedom as possible.
So college was a chance to go out on your own.
To go out on my own, and I did that, and it just so happened that Southwest Baptist University initially was where I ended up at, because it was a good sell to my parents. And then very quickly I realized I needed something with a little more breadth, a little more diversity, a little bit more things to be involved in. And I started to look around the MIAA because I wanted to stay within the MIAA, and the reason for that being I played soccer, and I wanted to play within a school in the MIAA, and I came here, met Coach Cook. I was supposed to go to some other schools that I would not name in the MIAA. And after my visit here, and the energy that I felt, I'm one that's always driven by energy, I said, oh, this is home. I'm coming here. And I transferred in a year, and the best decision I could have made. And then when I got to campus, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, Judy.
Right, a lot of people come and say, what's your major? And you say, I don't know.
Well, in growing up in an immigrant household, you're either going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and I wanted neither. And so how do I convince my family that I was doing something that is real? And so I dabbled around in different majors, business and pre-med, and I needed to do an interview for a summer job with IMG. And I asked around campus, and they said, well, you should go check out the communications building. They have a TV station there. I said, oh, really? I walked in. The first person that greeted me, and who's still here, Robin Douglas, and she led me into here, and we shot my interview. And then I said, wait, I don't want to leave. How do I actually have a show here? I want to work here. And she laid the groundwork, and fast forward 18 years, that was very instrumental, frankly. And even after I left here, and we were joking as we were walking down to the studio how my boss now at Warner Brothers, Rick Merrill, you were actually one of the references that he called to check to see if I was really a student station manager here.
And that's something that giving the students that hands-on opportunity is something we always talk about at Missouri Southern. And you, as a student, had that. You mentioned doing shows, being able to do things.
And you don't realize that as a student here until you actually step away. Just as they always say, right? You don't really realize how good you're having until you no longer have it anymore. And as a student here, we had certain opportunities that were afforded to us, one of which was being a part of the National Broadcasting Society, which the school supported us and allowed us to travel to the different conventions around the country. And going to those conventions, you got exposed to your competition, in essence, right? Your future competition.
Other college students, right.
Other college students. And you would see the resources they have, which is abundance, because certainly it's all relative. And then at the same token, you would also hear the frustrations of the fact that because they're in such a bigger school, it's harder for them to get that hands-on experience. Where here, you walk into this place, you're all your own limitation. It's all about how much hour you're not willing to put in. But if you're willing to put in the hours, there's always opportunity to collaborate with other students, to be a part of a Newsmakers show that's been on now for 20-something odd years.
30-something years.
30-something years. So you could be a part of that. In the process, you get to meet those Newsmakers network, but most importantly, you get to learn on the job right away. Versus some of the other big schools, what I learned from friends that I've become friends with is that sometimes, not until you're a senior, you can sit behind the desk and try to do a show.
So you had a lot of hands-on experience, but yet your career took you not on the production side, but to the business side of television. So people might say, well, how did that end up? Because we're going to talk about what you're doing now, but obviously you took a different path.
Yes, the numbers don't lie. It's because for me, I think the overall experience that I was able to get, and I spoke in one of the classrooms this morning before we did the taping, and I talked about aha moments with Bill and the other students. And for me, I think being given the opportunity to be the student station manager sort of exposed me in a different way.
Right.
And when it was time to make a decision if I wanted to be a talent on air or go into a different side of the business, I realized I was just so passionate about entertainment in the TV business. I didn't really care which way I went. I went to the business side of things because I felt it was a better way for me to sort of control my own destiny.
So the management tried right along into working up in the business side.
That's correct. So thank you.
You're welcome. So you left Missouri Southern, and you mentioned Warner Brothers. That wasn't your first stop.
No, it was not my first stop. And you know, it's the idea of never quitting on yourself and never giving up on your dreams. When you start to live it and when you have to execute it, it's a lot different versus when you're just hearing about it or you're just talking about it in theory. And for me, I had different challenges and things I wanted to accomplish. And when I realized that the job offers that I had to be on air were not necessarily that exciting for me to go live in some other places that I would have to live initially. When ESPN hung up the phone on me and told me to go get some experience, I realized, oh, okay, there's a real world out there.
There's other people that
you're saying I can't just call Judy and say, hey, can I get a TV show on the air? I can't just go to the board of KGCS and say, hey, I'd like to propose this show. And he said, no, go get some experience, and then call me back in 10 years. And I realized, oh, okay, this is real world now.
Right.
So I initially took a path into the business side of things. I got into a management training program at Target, lived in Kansas City for a month, but before that, I had already set the stage for the business side of the business through the rep firm, companies like Petrie, Media Corporation, Fox Entertainment, and they had all offered me positions, but I wasn't necessarily excited about the entry position they had offered me, so I thought, you know what, let me go this route. And I did that for about a month, and Target's a great company, but it just wasn't for me. And the person that I was in training with quickly realized that, and she said, you know what, you're making the right decision, and I support you to go on and go follow that thing everything that you seek.
You still wanted to seek the business.
I still wanted to seek the business. That's correct. And I made some phone calls back to some of the people that I had interviewed with, and I was lucky enough to where one of them, Stephanie Holloway, who was in Blair Television in Dallas, referred me right into what was called the Petrie Media Television Training Program, also known as sort of the Harvard of the rep business.
The business side of
it. Yeah, and what the rep business is basically you are the middleman between the TV stations around the country and the advertising community in the respective cities that you would live in, whether that's LA, New York, Chicago, Dallas, et cetera, et cetera. You were the face of those TV stations, negotiating all of their ad spots for them, and so ad buys. And so those guys were phenomenal at training you, and when you came out, you were ready to take on the world. And some of the alums from Petrie have gone on to run networks. The Ken Solomons of the world were running Tennis Channel and others. The Rick Merrills who were running sales for Warner Brothers. So I just knew it was a good path, and it worked out okay for me.
Good. Now, Warner Brothers, when you're talking about the business side, a lot of people watch television or entertainment, and they just see what's on the screen. They don't realize what goes on behind the scenes. And right now, you're vice president for station sales. So somebody asked me, what does that job mean? How do you describe that for them?
Don't worry, you're not the only one asking that question, because my mother asked me that question every day. What do you do for work? I know you work at a studio, but what does that mean? So it's interesting because the education is the foundation, and then the ability to take the education and apply it to execution is the winning formula. So I was trained, I was educated here, and I had a certain level of confidence that, okay, I could step into certain things. Because you may think, well, you're a student station manager, or you just did a little TV show on campus. But people don't realize the organization that goes into creating that, from who do I reach out to help me go do a field piece? Who do I reach out to be my camera person? So in essence, you were doing things that people do at a much bigger level without even realizing you're doing it until you fall into it. And so when you talk about distribution within an entertainment company, that's the arm that goes and make the money. That's the arm that goes and hunt to help pay all the bills for everything. So the sales department is responsible for generating the revenue, and then the creative department is responsible for bringing in the content. So as a vice president of distribution, I'm part of a team of a handful of people, and our job is to take everything from the conceptual shows that we produce, that are produced by our creative arm, Telepictures and Warner Brothers, to go figure out a way to put it on the air. That's Ellen DeGeneres, TMZ, The Real, People's Court, Judge Mathis, Extra, and a bunch of others that I've been so fortunate to be a part of. And then there's the other side of it, which is the scripted side. The conceptual side is interesting because you don't know what it is, other than they have an idea.
Got to brainstorm. Let's do something with it.
Let's do something with it, and then this is what the concept will be. And then the scripted stuff is the stuff that's already been on the air for a number of years. Now it's going out to monetize it for the company. So our role is to take all of our content, all of our IP, and make it work over and over and over to generate revenue for the studio.
So you're really the business side, as you say, of the television business.
That's
People
correct.
appreciate that.
That's correct.
And of course, you've been very involved with the company, but I want to make sure we mention that the personal side, you also have gotten to some entrepreneur approaches. That not just working for Warner Brothers, you have some other interests, and that, so it seems like that interest in wanting to expand your horizons.
Wow, it's a thing, right? I came here, I was a student athlete, I played soccer, so I had to keep myself busy doing other things, and that path evolves in different things as you become a professional. You look for ways to satisfy different appetites that you have. Some of us devote all of that time into doing charitable work, whether it's sitting on boards or partaking in whatever your passion is. And for myself, it's a combination of both. I'm a product of an immigrant family, as I said, and so that means I have ties to a third world country where my time and resources could always be helpful and useful. And so my other involvements include sitting on the board for Teach for America. I invested in a spirits company, and that one was called Toast Vodka, which was driven by my passion for charity, because the founder, my partner, my good friend, a gentleman by the name of DJ Lewis, who is a music icon, music executive, had a passion for giving back to Haiti, and our passion just sort of came together. Our girlfriends at the time, now our wives, is who brought us together. Annie and Eva, and so we both have that mutual passion. So we wanted to build something, and hopefully it becomes bigger than us, and we can do a whole lot more good in the country. And that all stemmed from him surviving the Haiti earthquake in 2010. Because of the music side, he did a big concert in 2009 and brought out Rick Ross and others for 500,000 people for free on the streets of Haiti. And out of that, sponsors wanted him to come back and start working on the next installment of the festival. It's called Starfest. And the whole idea of Starfest was to do concerts around the Caribbean and then use that, leverage that proceed to give back to education, hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. And no place can use that more than Haiti can. And so it was successful. He was supposed to come back into Haiti on January 11th of 2010. He missed his flight, and then he landed in the country the day of the earthquake on January 12th, 3 hours before what I think we all now know as the biggest natural disaster to hit that island. And wow, and a couple interesting decisions he made really changed the pace of his life. He decided not to hang out at the Hotel Montana where he always stayed and did everything, every meeting, lunches. For some reason that day, he dropped off his bag and said, let's go into town and grab lunch. 3 hours later, the earthquake hit. The Hotel Montana was flattened to the ground, and everyone there lost their lives. And it was out of that experience where he realized that life is short, and you must celebrate every day above ground. So the word toast and the name of Toast Vodka represents the anthem of celebration. And that's the business side of that. And then we alternatively created a parallel line called Toast First Response, and the whole idea for that is based on his experience and watching the basic things that people could have used. Oh yeah, when the disaster happens, you need food and water. That's exactly right. And so the idea of Toast First Response, as we scale it, is to be able to be the first on the ground when something happened, and anywhere around the world. Certainly underprivileged areas tend to need that the most, but most recent we just helped together with our partners and our distillery in Miami, put together a whole coalition of stuff to send to the Bahamas post the hurricane. Before that, we helped Western Florida, Naples, with our friends and partners from T Roofing out of Tulsa. I'm in Revolution Roofing in Naples. We brought an 18-wheeler from the churches of Tulsa that helped us, and brought water, food, and dry foods into Western Florida to help post, I think it was Maria. Right. And then your interest in teaching, obviously going back to the role of in Teach for America, the importance of education for everyone. Well, you know, regardless of what side of the political aisle one sit on, I think everyone can appreciate education. And I always seem to quote Che Guevara because he was one who was such a huge advocate for education during the crazy Cuban Revolution, and because he believed that an uneducated population can be easily fooled by its government. And so because of that, I've always been a big advocate of that, because I come from a country where 80% of the population is illiterate. And so wherever I can be involved, I try to be involved. And Teach for America is a great organization to where I could kind of get a better understanding, grassroots understanding of what the needs are and what the challenges are. And so I was invited into the board about 3+ years ago. Right. And so I've been a part of that, and in the Southern California area, we work with the underserved neighborhoods that always have a shortage of teachers, and our goal is to raise money to help drive the message and try to help recruit as many great teachers. And then other than that, we also show our face, because a lot of the times in underprivileged areas, what you find is that if people are not exposed to people outside of their 4-square radius, they're in that small area, bubble, then it's hard for them to envision what their life could be beyond just watching a football player on television or a basketball player or a rapper. So when you can go in and show, hey, there's a lot more to the world than just that, the world is bigger than that, then I think that makes a big difference. And I imagine that can apply to many communities, that you have to go beyond your little border of where you live. Yes, indeed. What's out there. Absolutely. I also have a company called the Links Company, or ties with that. That's something that caught my attention. And I know we have some visuals. I don't know if we'll be able to see them. But see, this is a little fun thing I'm playing with, but I like to follow things. I like to stay close to things I'm passionate about. Family, businesses, investments, and so I think for me, any opportunity I get, I try to figure out how to play with it. You know, because one of the things that I think I've been fortunate of, I've had some mentors, particularly particularly at Warner Brothers, who've encouraged you to use 10% of your time to go learn something away from what you do, because it can help you learn something to bring back to the organization that can help you be better at what you do. And I can't tell you how true that is, Judy, because the things I've been able to observe and some of these, being involved in some of these investments and the way business operates, it really gives me a whole different perspective and what it's like to run a big company like that in some a very small flash. And so the Links company is a new venture. I partnered up with a wonderful creative designer named Carlos Castillo, and he had this vision of creating men's accessories, and the brand is called the Collaterals. So as you know, collaterals in finance terms represents value to something, right? You want to get a loan for a car, what is your collateral, et cetera, et cetera. So in this sense, collaterals with men's fashion means something like this adds value to the look of your fashion. So it's fun little stuff that I like. I believe in the brand, and my wife is who, my wife seems to introduce me to everything. Eva, I love you. And so she was the one who introduced me to this brand 6 years ago, and I fell in love with the design and everything that Carlos does, and I've been chasing him to be a part of it, and eventually we were able to work out something where I now help him run, I now help him fund it and take it over.
Great. Well, when you were a student at Southern, in the studio running cameras, would you ever have dreamt that your career would have taken you to all these different ventures?
Wow. Well, I mean, my dreams started from just the hope of just getting on an airplane and coming to the United States. So I remember being a 6, 7-year-old kid looking at planes flying overhead and having visions of grandeur of, wow, can't wait to be in the streets of America, because America's one big country. Yes, and then be driving a convertible and doing the XYZ. But when I was here, I don't know if my mind ever limited me to what could be, but it's hard to ever see it until you're actually amongst it, right? And success is defined different for everyone. And one thing I've learned over the years, and I've had some great people to remind me of this every day, success is not always attached to a dollar sign. And so I've had to really think about that, and it's the ability to be able to do things and partake in things and enjoy it while you're doing it, and I've been very fortunate of that. So no, some of the things I've been able to do, people I've been able to meet, places I've been able to go, no, it was hard, because there was a time living in Haiti, I didn't know if we would ever become a family again, because my father was away from us for 8 years while he created the life here.
Well, I know you had a chance to visit with some students while you were here, as you mentioned in the class. What sort of tips for success would you give to not only the ones you talked to today, but people who might be watching?
Wow. First of all, a disclaimer is that I can never say, let me give a tip for success, right? Because it's we all define success differently. And I think for me, success is having balance in your life. And so one of the things that I think I shared with the students is what used to be my model. And I follow that model unknowingly, frankly, because I used to preach, if you remember this, I used to end every broadcast when I was here that don't forget there is no substitution for hard work. And boy, that is so true, because you are going to work and walk into rooms with people that have high pedigrees, fancier schools, fancier degrees, but it doesn't really matter once you're in the arena. It's who wants it the most.
Who's going to work hard.
Who's going to work the hardest. And so my feedback to anyone I talk to, whether it's people I mentor that are coming up in the business, or when I have the privilege to have conversations with students, because I can still visualize myself sitting in that classroom, is that it doesn't matter who you are, you gotta work your butt off, because that's the only way to accomplish anything. The shortcuts, only a few people get away with that and get lucky with it, so it's not for the masses. So do not rely on shortcuts. Working
together. And of course, when you are in the, whether working for Warner Brothers out there in the communities, you're also representing Missouri Southern, of course, coming back to being Outstanding Alumni. What do you say when somebody says, well, what's Missouri Southern? I mean, I'm sure there's parts of the country where people say, tell me about Missouri Southern.
Well, it's always interesting, because people are curious, well, how the heck did you end up in Joplin, Missouri? I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about, he went to Wash U, and he's from LA, and this is Joplin. Not many people go
Take
there.
That path, right?
And so what I like to quickly say to them is, you realize that the connection to the world, first of all, the world is flat, right? So it's not that big of a separation like it used to be. But the one thing about Missouri Southern that I think has resonated, and when I tell people about Missouri Southern, is that I talk about our international mission that has put us on a global scale. And because of that international mission, I've been able to make friends that have been long-lasting friends to this day in my life, to where when I had my travel bug that lasted for almost a decade, where I was traveling everywhere that I could get a cheap ticket to go to for a long time, I had someone in most city that I would go to that could be my base and my foundation to where I could have a local experience. That's for one. Not many people from middle schools can tell you that, right? They may have international students, but there's no sort of a correlation around
working with them
and creating that sort of a connection. And so whether it's Pina out in Turkey or Peter in Holland or Leo in Brazil, I had a great time with Leo Gomez, who played for the basketball team. And when I went to the World Cup in Brazil, he received me and my wife, and we had a ball. He was a great local host. So those are the things that you don't think about, that you walk away with when you think about going to a school like here, because you would think you're only going to be limited to certain people. So when you say Missouri Southern, they first look at you. You went from Delaware to Missouri Southern with all the schools on the East Coast? I said, I did. It was by accident, but it was the best accident that could have happened to me.
Great. And a lot of things that have happened, obviously, since then. In your future, have a lot of opportunities. So you continue to look to the future.
Absolutely.
And tying that together. Well, I know Missouri Southern's having a busy homecoming weekend. You'll be one of the many honorees, and it sounds like you're also keeping in touch with the graduates, the other students that you were with at the time. So those connections continue, as I say, one of those themes for life, you know, as you tie together.
That's true, Judy, and these things don't, organic connections, while they're organic, but you have to keep them alive. And so you have to take an interest in being curious about other people. That's one of the other, to bring it back to the question of what suggestions or advice I was able to share with the students, is that you have to be willing to go out of your comfort zone, and you have to be open to having friends that may be different from how and where you grew up. And then once you have those connections, you have to cherish those connections, because they're rare. They don't come around very often. And then once you leave here, you won't have the opportunity to be able to build such organic connections like that again, because you go into the workforce, most of the time you working side by side with people towards a common goal, but for the most part, most people are for themselves.
Right.
And so the connection is always questionable in some environments, not in every environment. It's not in mine, but typically that's the norm. And so you have to be able to say, wow, let's stick together, and then continue to stay in touch with those people, and then you'd be surprised how people come back together.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank you once again for coming here while you're having this weekend on campus and visiting with me today for Newsmakers.
Pleasure's all mine. It's a privilege. Again, it's surreal that I'm sitting here with you having this conversation. You're one of the people that I truly cherish, and I've been very grateful to have had the pleasure of being in your atmosphere and your sphere while I was a student here. Thank you for all the support that you provide to every student that's walked through these doors of Webster Hall.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week for Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on the station. We'll see you then.